Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Tony Jones from over at the Salt Lake Tribune, to come on and chat about the NBA. Tony, for me, is gotta be my favorite beat writer in the country. He is awesome. He covers the entire league with a weekly column over there in addition to his duties as the beat writer for the Utah Jazz. Tony is also one of those guys who has sneaky, really good draft takes because he's one of the few that actually watch college basketball, so we'll get into that as well. Tony, what's going on, man?
What's up, Sam? How are you? Thank you for having me on as always, and thank you for the too kind introduction, which is only halfway lies.
No, none of it's lies, man. You do a great job over there, and I'm excited to follow your work in what is going to be an exciting offseason for Utah and what has been a really exciting NBA playoffs as well. First, let's talk about that, though. Before we get into it, we're sponsored today by Simple Contacts and RX Bar. You can use the code GAMETHEORY to get $30 off of Simple Contacts and to get 25% off of an RX Bar order. We'll get into those advertisements later on, though. What have been your overall impressions of the playoffs so far, as we're recording just hours before Boston and Cleveland play a Game 7? We have Golden State and Houston playing a Game 7 tomorrow night. What is your overall impression of what you've seen so far in this playoffs?
Well, I think the basketball gods owed us this conference finals round, because I thought, to be honest, before the conference finals, probably
it was a mess.
It was a mess. I would say that before the conference finals, I would say that the most hotly contested series was probably Utah and Oklahoma City in the first round.
Yep.
There were series that were closer. Obviously, Boston and Milwaukee was closer. That went 7. Cleveland and Indiana went 7 in the first round. But there was only one real series that was really must-see TV through 6 games, and that was Utah and Oklahoma City. The rest were kind of duds a little bit, and I thought that it was a real letdown through the first 2 rounds, but I thought, man, the conference finals, they turned out to be really epic, because on one hand you have Houston and Golden State, and that's turned out to be every bit the series that people thought it could be. Even though a lot of people thought that Golden State was going to be able to wipe the floor with them going into the series. And then on the other hand, you have a young, up-and-coming, upstart Boston Celtics team against, LeBron James, who's carrying a team that hasn't been this depleted since the team he carried to the 2007 finals. So, I think that there are a lot of storylines on each side. I think that the play has been really good. I think that we've had some really dramatic moments.
So yeah, let's talk with the Eastern Conference and start there. I guess, what do you make of this idea that Boston does not have all that much talent on their roster, and that this is like a Brad Stevens coaching job that has brought them to this point? Because I kind of hate it. I kind of hate that narrative a lot. Think that it really drastically underestimates a lot of what Boston's talent is and how quickly it's come along. Terry Rozier's probably a top 20 point guard in the NBA, top 25 point guard in the NBA now. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are both top 3 picks for a reason, and they've come along a little bit quicker than what I think everyone expected. And Al Horford's obviously an incredible player as well. Just because Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving are out, it doesn't mean that this Boston team isn't remarkably talented. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that narrative is pretty much malarkey. Just for the reasons that you stated. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are man, both of those guys are going to be all-stars for years to come.
Did you just drop a malarkey on this podcast, by the way? I think that's a first.
It was malarkey. It was a Travis Shamockery. We've been bamboozled. Run amok and let play.
Oh, my God. I agree with you, though. They're going to be all-stars. Continue. I just had to call that out. I was shocked. This is a podcast that tends to just call out bullshit as we see it, and you're out here using malarkey. I love it.
No, it's just, I think, so you can tell how good a player is by what their market value is, right? So let's go through the starting lineup. Terry Rozier's next contract is going to be for $15 to $20 million, correct? Jaylen Brown's next contract. Jaylen Brown's next contract is going to be a max contract. Jason Tatum's next contract is going to be a max contract. Al Horford's already making max dollars. There is a lot of talent on this Boston team, and obviously Marcus Smart is going to be coveted on the restricted free agency market as well. Obviously next year they're going to get Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving back. They're going to be really, really, really talented. But let's not pretend that this team isn't more talented than the Cleveland Cavaliers team that LeBron is leading right now.
Yeah, I think that they are more talented than Cleveland, to be honest. I just do. Like, LeBron James is absolutely unbelievable, and he's very clearly the best player in this series. I think he's very clearly the best player in the world. You would probably go farther than that, given what I've seen on your Twitter timeline recently. You would call him the best player ever. And I think I agree with you for what it's worth. But that podcast is not for now. I'll have you on later in the summer, and we'll talk about that to death. I think that every other player that Boston would have, the second best player, the third best player, the fourth best player, I'd probably say Terry Rozier is a little bit ahead of Kevin Love right now in terms of like being the fifth best player just in this series because Kevin Love is injured. So like they basically have everyone else. Like they would have a starting lineup like surrounding LeBron basically. So I hate that we have just... Like, I think that Brad Stevens is worth lionizing in many ways. He really is an incredible coach. He would have gotten my Coach of the Year vote if I had one. But I also think that it's now gone a little bit too far in that direction because it's now starting to denigrate the players a little bit. And I think that we need to get back to a situation where we recognize... hey, Brad Stevens is really good, but also the players are really good, and they're executing at a ridiculously high clip on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Here's the thing about Brad. I think Brad is, I think he's tremendous. But as you said, the players, Brad's not going to go out there and make three-pointers, and he's not going to go out there and he can't go out there and execute. What he's great at putting them in position to be successful, but the players themselves are the ones that ultimately have to go out and get the job done, and they've been able to do that. Like Al Horford's just been incredible during this playoff run. He's been incredible this season on both ends. Yeah. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have both they have progressed and developed at such a rapid rate this season, and Terry Rozier has as well. And most importantly, this team is playing with an incredible amount of confidence, and this is one of the reasons why I fully expect to see Boston in the NBA Finals come Thursday because, they play, they're one of the best home teams in the league, and they've been one of the best home team in the playoffs, and they've been a team that feeds off its energy, and they feed off their athleticism and their ability to defend. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in Game 7, but I fully expect Boston to win this game.
Yeah, and even without getting too much into the weeds on like previewing Game 7, just because this podcast is going to come out like 10 minutes before Game 7 starts, and it's going to have zero shelf life there. But like, it's worth noting too, like I think that the Boston home court factor, I think it actually does really help them on the floor because it really helps their defensive intensity. And I think that whenever their defensive intensity is rolling in the way that it is, it allows them to get up and down the floor and get easier offense early on in the shot clock, which is something that they've really tried to take advantage of with Cleveland's transition defense being as deficient as it has been throughout the season. So I think that what we're seeing in many ways with Boston at home, it's not that like the Boston crowd is better than everything else, even though I do think that Boston does have a great home court. And I think that Boston, you listen to JJ Redick, he said that was the loudest gym that he's ever played in his life whenever the Sixers were there in the second round. But I think more than that, it's that the players feed off of the crowd and they ratchet up defense, and then they allow themselves to go out, get easier offense off of live ball turnovers, off of longer rebounds, and really take advantage of teams that way. And I'd be interested to see how much that advantage would play up in the next round against a Warriors or a Rockets team, because both those teams, they've been beaten in transition defense in this series.
Well, I think, if Boston advances, I don't expect them to be really successful against the Warriors or the Rockets. I think both of those teams are incredible. I think when it comes to beating those guys up and down the floor, it's about forcing turnovers. And for as many, we all know that the Warriors can be turnover prone and they can get loose with the basketball. But usually when they get loose with the basketball, they just throw the basketball in the third row. They don't turn the ball. They don't return the ball over live ball style and let you get out and get a bunch of transition points. Houston doesn't either, because they keep the ball in James Harden's hands and they keep the ball in Chris Paul's hands. And both of those guys are great at handling the basketball and at least getting you a shot on every possession. So it's kind of the only way that they would have a chance to win against either one of those two teams, outside of going Super Saiyan and just making 80% of their shots. But it's one of those things. I think it works against Cleveland, but I don't think it will work against Houston or Golden State. But at the same time, I think that if Boston would have a chance in the NBA Finals, they have to feed off of what they do at TD Waterhouse.
Let's talk about Cleveland real quick. What LeBron is doing right now, I can't really remember anything like it in the playoffs. Make the finals, don't make the finals, whatever. I'm not going to think less of LeBron with the way that this team is constructed and the way that Ty Lue is kind of getting circles coached around him in every series this time around. I'm not going to sit here and, destroy LeBron James if they lose tonight. I think he's just been absolutely ridiculous every single time he takes the floor in the playoffs. And it seems like to me every time that I'm watching him, I'm watching something special. This is appointment viewing now with LeBron James. And, he's been like that for a while, but this seems like something totally different. It's on a scale that I can't really remember. Maybe the first finals run where he dragged that Cleveland team to the finals, and then they got swept. You could maybe make a case that, that was a similar run from LeBron, because if I remember correctly, that was the run that included, for me, what is still my favorite NBA performance I've ever seen live in my life. It was the Cleveland Detroit game where he scored the last 29 points for Cleveland or something. This is one of those runs for LeBron. Every single night he's bringing it in a way that I can't remember anyone else has ever brought it before.
You were in the stands in Auburn Hills?
No, I just mean watching it live on TV even.
I was about to say, man, you should have told me that. It would have been like you being at the decision or something.
No, I was how old was I? I was probably, 18 at that point. I was young. That was a decade ago.
That would have been great. Look, I think this playoff run for LeBron has been, I'd say it's been one of the best playoff runs that I've ever seen. From what he did, first of all, he's got, 8 40-point games in this postseason? He's got 5 games in this postseason alone of 44 points or more.
It's insane. It's totally insane.
Kobe Bryant has 5 such games in his career. So that gives you context. I'll repeat that. LeBron has 5 games this season where he scored 5 games this postseason where he scored at least 44 points. Kobe has 5 such games in his career. So,
are you trying to get the Kobe stands on my ass here? Trying to get them all to attack the podcast? Is that the goal?
I'm trying to stir up all the beehives. Let's get it. So, Listen, I mean, it just gives you context of how great he's been this postseason. He's bought it every round, and he's had a signature in every round. So against Indiana, he had the game winner in Game 5. Against Toronto, he hits the game winner in Game 3, and he has Game 6 against Boston.
Yep.
He's just been phenomenal. And the thing that struck me, LeBron James, in watching this playoff run, is how far along his skill level has come in the last 5 years. He has never been able in the past to play the spots. And he's in this postseason run, he's been able to play the spots on the floor better than he has in his entire career. He's had the wrong-footed floaters. His perimeter shot has come along. He's been able to go mid post, shoot fadeaways.
Yeah, like he had that game against Toronto where it seemed like every shot was like that goofy ass fadeaway over OG. Yep.
I mean, he's just been able to score from all three levels, and he's shown us a skill level that frankly he hasn't had in his entire career. And you know what that tells you? That tells you that as his career has progressed, he's taken the time to become a better basketball player. And I think that's probably should be one of the most endearing traits that he's shown us on the floor in his entire career, because there are so many guys that would have just posted off of the athleticism that he's had in that he's shown. But as his athleticism has waned a little bit, his skill level has expanded by a lot, and that's why he's still at 33 years old, by far the best basketball player in the world.
He has scored 340 more points than anyone else on the Cavs in the playoffs. Like he is doubling every other Cavalier in terms of scoring average. He is tripling every other Cavalier in scoring average other than Kevin Love. It is insane what this man is doing.
The Cavs need to they need to get somebody around. They need to dangle that 8th pick and trade it for somebody who can come in and score if they hope to keep him, or LeBron just needs to say goodbye and go somewhere else where he's got a better team around him.
Yeah.
One of the two.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Let's talk about the Warriors and the Rockets real quick. Weird series. Game 6 last night was one of the weirder games I can remember, if only because the Rockets had that first quarter where they were up 17, and then everything just ended after the third quarter. Like it was over after the third quarter. That patented Warriors run came, and unlike Game 4, the Rockets didn't have an answer after that run came, and it was Klay Thompson, it was Steph, it was just everyone outside of Kevin Durant playing super high-level basketball. But let's talk about Klay real quick, because Klay is always the unsung guy, always the guy that is considered the fourth piece of this group. Klay is going to go down for me as like maybe the most like underappreciated star of this era, and it's because he doesn't really give a shit. And I mean that in a good way. Like, he doesn't care about the accolades. He doesn't care about, the moment, really. I think that he cares about it, but he also has found a way to really embrace it also. And then additionally, that lack of ego that he has is so remarkable for a superstar player in this era. He's going to go down as probably the third best shooter ever, like maybe Ray Allen, Steph, and him. And you never hear anything about that, and I think that we should talk about it more, because Klay is just unbelievable.
I tweeted something last night that should give insight to how much I appreciate Klay Thompson. And what I tweeted was, Klay's got the most heart on that team, and there's a term in basketball, to where if you're just a real cutthroat guy, nothing bothers you, we call you a killer. And Klay Thompson is a killer. And he bailed Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry out last night. He had 35 points. How many 3-pointers did he hit? He had 9 threes.
Yep.
He basically took over the game, and he imposed his will on the game. And he did the same thing against Oklahoma City. in Game 6 in 2016. Same exact thing. Really just came out, imposed his will on the game. He's a guy who, the moment is never too big for him. And last night, the moment looked too big for Kevin Durant. And
it did. It was weird.
Yeah. And in large parts, it looked too big for Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry, to me, didn't really – I know he finished with really good numbers, but he didn't really start rolling until, Golden State was rolling and the pressure was lifted a little bit. And Kevin Durant never got rolling. And it was Klay. When they needed shots, it was Klay that came in and provided those shots. And without Klay last night, this might sound a little different, given that the score ended up being a 31-point game. But without Klay last night, Golden State doesn't win that game, because just without Klay, they don't get back into the game.
Yeah.
Because those, Durant and Curry, they had nothing going on. And Klay willed them back into the game. He willed the crowd back into the game. And I would say after Klay, Draymond was the second most important player in that game, because he was incredible defensively, and he finished like a point and a steal short of a 5-by-5, which is crazy, which is insane for a conference final game. So without those two, I'm not sure that we're talking about a series right now.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you 100%. Klay Thompson is just unbelievable as a shooter, and he is an absolute assassin. But without Dre in that game, I think it's really hard for them to ratchet up the defensive intensity in the way that they needed, even in the second quarter, before they got going in the third quarter, because that's when the momentum changed. The momentum changed whenever Dre came back in and they started to really trap and they started to get going. They got it back within like 8 or 9 before Houston got it out to 10 at halftime again. I think that got them really re-engaged in the game in a significant manner. And once that happened, you felt like the run was coming in the third quarter. And yeah, you're right. Dre 100% deserves that credit. He was great last night. And I just want to give a real quick number on Klay Thompson. So Klay Thompson has never had a season below 40.1% from three-point range. That's just crazy, first and foremost. Ray Allen had 11 seasons below 40% from three-point range. Klay Thompson is 4 of the top 25 three-point field goal attempt or 3-point field goal make seasons in NBA history. Ray Allen has 2 such seasons. Obviously different eras. Ray Allen didn't take quite as many threes, and some of them were more contested than what Klay gets, but I think we've hit the point where Klay Thompson's probably the second best shooter ever behind Steph. I think that I'm there.
I do think you hit on something with Ray Allen that was context. Ray never played. Ray played with Rashard Lewis for a lot of his career. So he did out of his career have another shooter on the floor, but he also played with Earl Watson for a lot of his career, and Rajon Rondo for a lot of his career. So it's Ray's shots and Klay's shots, 2 different things. You know what I mean? One of them is going to be, there's a lot less. Klay has played with a lot less gravity in his career than Ray has, which I think skews things. But that being said, if you look at all of the great shooters in the league, Steph, Ray Allen, Larry Bird, Reggie Miller, Klay Thompson ranks up there. He doesn't have to take a back seat to any of those guys. He's a guy that's been able, he's a shooter with size, so he's always been able to get his shot off. He has a nice high release point. He has a great release point. He has a quick release, and he had the best thing about him is that as a shooter, he's never had a conscience. So, he's been able to always shrug off whatever cold streak that he's been on, and I've seen him on cold streaks, and I've seen him on incredible hot streaks in the same game. So you got to take your hat off to him, and especially you got to the thing that separates him from most other shooters that I mentioned. He is by far, and I mean by far, the best defender of all of those shooters. None of those other guys are on on in his galaxy.
Yep.
As a defender, and for him to be that good a shooter, and that good an offensive player, and that premier defender that he is, I think he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, like I think that ship sailed a while ago. I mean, basically after last year's finals, I think that Hall of Fame is definitely happening for Klay. We don't even need to worry about that anymore. It's just how high up the 3-point shooting list he gets and how much distance him and Steph put between them and everyone else for me, because I think it could be quite a bit, and I think that it could be a while until we see anyone pass those guys, given their synergy together. Before we move on, I have a ad to read for you. RX Bar is a whole food protein bar. It means that their bars are made with 100% whole ingredients. They want to be transparent and upfront with their customers, which is why they label the core ingredients on the front of the package. The ingredients that make up texture and taste end up on the back, and besides being a go-to snack that checks off a number of nutritional boxes, RX bars actually taste delicious. They found that creating a bar made from real whole food ingredients actually tastes better than anything else that's out there. They don't need the fillers, additives, chemicals, anything like added sugar. They just need the real ingredients that make up the core texture of the bar. They come in 11 delicious varieties, and as of May 14th, there are 3 new flavors: mango pineapple, peanut butter and berries, and chocolate hazelnut. Also starting on May 29th, RX Bar is going to introduce that RX nut butter. Made with the same core ingredients as RX Bar protein bars, the new nut butters are going to include a base of nuts, egg whites, and dates. They're available in honey, cinnamon peanut butter, and vanilla almond butter. Their core ingredients do the talking. It really is simply like eating 3 egg whites, 2 dates, and 6 almonds with no BS. They're great for a number of occasions: breakfast on the go, snacks at the office. Throw them in a bag for a plane ride, toss them in your backpack. These things taste great. I eat them regularly if I just need to do something while I'm working. If I'm hungry, I just grab an RX bar out of the cupboard and I have one. My favorite is personally the mint chocolate chip, but they're all really, really good. My call to action for you guys is that for 25% off of your first order, visit rxbar.com/gametheory, GAMETHEORY, and enter that promo code GameTheory at checkout. For a limited time, every order will receive 6 free samples, 3 of the new RX Bar flavor varieties, and 3 of the new RX nut butters. Free sample ends on June 30th. Again, that's rxbar.com/game theory. Tony, let's talk real quick about the team that you cover, the Utah Jazz. What do we got going on this offseason for the Utah Jazz, given the leap that they took a bit unexpectedly this year?
Well, they're going to, the immediate thing is the NBA draft, and, they have the 21st pick for the draft. And, one of the things about this draft that I don't think that they expected 6 months ago, but now the way this draft is shaping up, it's shaping up to have at least 21 really good players. The Jazz are pretty bullish on being able to draft somebody that has the potential to help them. And I don't think that they would have thought the same thing in September of last year, or even as late as December or January. So they're going to go with that, and then they have free agency. Dante Exum and Derek Favors are their 2 priority free agents, and I think that they want both of those guys back. Not sure how that's going to go. I'm pretty confident in saying that Dante Exum will be back in the Jazz uniform next year. Not so sure about Favors. I would give it a 50-50 chance as of now, which is probably a lot better a chance than I would have given it if you had asked me the same question in December. But I think the Jazz look at this team, and there are a lot of factors at play. But it'll be interesting to see if they add to this team outside of the draft, or whether they try to add in free agency, or whether they try to bring everybody back and run it back next year.
The really big luxury they have, obviously, is having 2 superstar players now, or at least like 2 top 30 players in the league, we can say, in Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and having those guys under contract for like 29 or 26 or 27, something like that, $1 million next year. and that being it, the Donovan Mitchell contract is going to end up being one of the most valuable in the entire NBA because of that. It's really going to allow allow Utah a lot of different avenues with which to build their roster. I would say even more than this summer. Next summer is the one where they can really make a dent if they think that they can convince high-level free agency talent to come to Utah, because you look at what comes off the books. You've got Ricky Rubio coming off. You've got Alec Burks coming off. You could, depending on what they decide to do with the non-guarantees, the Thabo Sefolosha, Jonas Jerebko, and Ekpe Udoh, they could have all those guys coming off of their salaries. So they have a lot of really, really interesting ways they can go about building this team. Maybe even this summer, the best move is to kind of punt unless you end up getting a superstar level player, and then looking forward to next summer when you can really, really make an impact.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't be shocked if they just run it back. I wouldn't be shocked if they say, you know what, Derek Favors, we're going to give you 1 year, $18 million, so you get paid this year.
Yep.
But it doesn't, screw us for next year, the 2019 free agency ball. They have not only Donovan Mitchell, but Royce O'Neal has a hugely valuable contract.
Yep.
Jay Crowder has a hugely valuable contract. So they're paying 3 of their rotation players, about $6 or $7 million. I mean, it's just kind of insane if you look at it that way. And then
throw on the Jay Crowder deal too, which I know that Jay was terrible in Cleveland, but Jay Crowder is still a pretty big bargain at $7.3 million next year.
Yeah, and the thing. So if you look at that, and you look at the fact that the Jazz really expect or hope, let's say not expect, but they hope that there's a lot of internal improvement. If you look at this, they think Ricky Rubio can improve. Mm-hmm. They think obviously Donovan Mitchell and Dante Exum and Royce O'Neal can improve. And they still think that Rudy Gobert has improvement remaining. So,
and the crazy thing is too, like Joe Ingles, even though he's 31 now, he's gotten better every year. Like, I know that by aging curves, he shouldn't keep getting better, but he has gotten better every year.
And those are some of the reasons. I just wouldn't be surprised if the Jazz use their mid-level exception and just kind of call it a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this. I think when you look at the Jazz next year, if you look at how they were this year, it took them 3 months of an acclimation. That's just not going to be there next year. This group is going to be able to hit the ground running next season, and there's not going to be so much of an adjustment period. So I think this team has a chance to be a really, really good team next year. I think they have a chance to win, 52, 53, 54, 55 games next year. Depending on what happens, maybe LeBron comes west, he comes to the Lakers, but I think that the Jazz certainly have a chance to be a top 4 team, depending on what happens around them in the Western Conference. But they're certainly well set up for the future.
I think that a big thing too for Utah is that they have these 3 three contracts that are non-guaranteed until July 1st in Thabo Sefolosha's case, and July 9th in Jonas Jerebko and Ekpe Udoh's case. They could use that, I think it's like $12 million, $13 million to go out and get a really good player from a team that might want cap space, because they can cut those guys basically on non-guaranteed contracts, get the cap space they need, and move on. Like a team like, say, like Indiana, if Thaddeus Young was to end up opting into his contract, they'd go out and get Thaddeus Young if they wanted to. And, if the Pacers wanted to be active in the free agency market, I don't know who they'd get better than Thad Young necessarily, but that's the kind of player that they can be in the market for, at least. Like that, there are a lot of teams out there that could use $13 million in cap space to maybe improve upon the player that they have right now, making that money.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I think here's the other thing that people aren't talking about. I think that, number one, there are going to be a lot of trades on this market this year because there's not a lot of money. And number two, I think that the Jazz are going to be, Dennis Lindsey's going to wake up one day and it's going to be like July 17th and, in a normal year, most of the good players will be gone because, they'd be off the market. I think he's going to wake up one day, mid to late July, and they're going to still be really good players left on the market because there's no money. And I always said this. I just think that, the Utah Jazzes, the San Antonio Spurs, the Oklahoma City Thunders, the Portland Trailblazers, well, maybe not Portland because they're really cash strapped, but a lot of those teams that have money but really don't have money, and a lot of those teams that are really good teams that normally wouldn't be in competition for a really good player free agency are going to be able to sneak away with a good player just because there's just not a lot of money on the market, and there are a lot of good players on this market.
Before we get into the NBA draft, the last thing that I want to talk to you about is just covering Donovan Mitchell this year because, I've talked to Donovan before. I think I wrote one of the first things about Donovan Mitchell as a potential NBA player while he was at Louisville. He's an awesome kid. I remember when I saw, I've told this story on the podcast before, but I saw him at Adidas Nations out here, and he was out here with his mom, and he just demanded to keep shooting after everyone had left the gym. It's the kind of work ethic that, I've seen firsthand, that Utah saw firsthand, that everyone who's come into contact with him has seen firsthand. And I guess that my question for you is, what was it like kind of covering a dude like that who is genuinely an elite level human being? He's a good dude to cover.
It's been a joy covering him for this one season. He's very approachable. We've had a lot of talks, just a lot of basketball talks, and we're both from the same region, so we've had a lot of talks, just kind of both of us being from New York. And he's just a guy. He's really smart, and he's really been just kind of mature beyond his years. It's funny because, he changed the entire dynamic of the Jazz locker room, just pretty much overnight. I've never heard music ever being played in a Jazz locker room before or after a game, before Donovan Mitchell came. And, when Gordon Hayward was with the Jazz, it was a different locker room. It was a much quieter locker room. And that's not a knock on Gordon. That's just who he was.
Yeah, it's a reality of his personality.
Yeah, it's a reality of his personality, and I think, the team kind of took what his lead was. And, this Jazz locker room is just completely different. It's just pretty gregarious, and, a lot of the guys just kind of embracing each other, and it's a lot. It just seems a lot more tight-knit, and it seems a lot more, it just seems a lot closer. So it's been really interesting, and obviously on the floor, it's been kind of a change in the guard with Donovan Mitchell coming in, but it's been like that off the floor as well. So it's really been interesting, and it's certainly the first time in my career that I've come close to having the chance to cover somebody live on and off the floor. So it's been a learning experience for me, and I'm looking forward to my second year covering Donovan and just trying to work hard and do the best that I can.
The last thing I'm going to ask you about Utah, you have one of the most legendary shit talkers in the NBA on that team in Joe Ingles. Do you have a good Joe Ingles story of him talking shit to someone on the court?
On the court? Just kind of how he just kind of basically, collectively and kind of eroded Paul Pierce verbally through this entire series.
Paul George,
that entire first round series. Huh?
Paul George, you mean, right?
Yeah, Paul George. It was. What did I say? Did I say Paul George?
You said Paul Pierce.
I said Paul Pierce?
Yeah.
Ooh, my bad. I meant Paul George. But it was just like, so in game one, you know, PG's just talking all types of trash. And then, you know, Joe just keeps getting in his head. And then, you know, by game 4, you know, Paul George takes a poke at Joe, and Paul's and Paul's level of play, you know, just kind of keeps dissolving through every game of the series, and now that's just kind of Joe. I mean, he's just like a gnat in your ear, just buzzing like through the entire game. And man, I don't know. I don't see how people haven't taken more swings at him than it hasn't, because he's just. I mean, because you know he's talked junk to me plenty. Like he's you know, seen me at a shoot around before, and he's been like, "Wow, Tony, you're wearing your one hoodie," and like, you know, he saw like a tape of me playing pickup basketball. He's like, "Man, you're trash," and I was like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Yes, you are." And it's just like, he doesn't turn it off. That's who he is. He doesn't turn it off the floor. And it's one of those things where, man, if you're going to deal with Joe Ingles, you better have a strong personality, and you better have thick skin, because if he senses a weakness, he's just going to go after it verbally, and it's just, you know what I mean, it's just not going to turn out well for you.
And the thing I've always heard about him, too, is that he's happy to kind of take it back, too. Like, if you say something back to him, he'll just, like, turn it around and just start laughing and just, like, kind of just being, like, normal human being.
Yeah, I got to, you know, so I think it was, like, after Game 3 or Game 4, one of those two games, he had a big game in the Oklahoma City series, and he was about to go to the podium. To interview, and you know, he was eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which is like a staple among NBA players. And, you know, and I was walking past him, I was like, "Man, your mouth going to be dry as hell on that podium." And just, everybody just laughing. And, you know, and he was just like, kind of like, "F you, Tony." So I was like, "F you back." So, you know, I've learned with Joe that you're absolutely right, Sam. I've learned with Joe that the best antidote with Joe is to give it right back to him.
Oh, man. Second sponsor of the show, Simple Contacts. Simple Contacts is the most convenient way to renew your contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of contacts from anywhere in minutes. It's vision care for the 21st century. If you need to renew your prescription, you just take a 5-minute vision test from your phone or computer. It's reviewed by a licensed doctor, and you receive a renewed prescription and reorder your contacts. All you need is your current contacts, an internet connection, and 10 feet of space. Why is Simple Contacts so awesome? It's convenient. There are a million things demanding your time. Contact lenses should not be one of them. They're fast, reliable, and they offer choice. It is a 5-star experience, noted by the fact that Simple Contacts has been rated 5 stars over 3,000 times on the App Store. They're great for summer, and they're going to save you money too, because the vision test is only $20. If you compare that with an appointment without insurance, it can cost over $200. So contact lens prices that are unbeatable. Standard shipping is free, and the best of all, we are offering a promotion to our listeners. Go to simplecontacts.com/gametheory, GAMETHEORY, and you will get a $30 off of your contact order. Again, that's simplecontacts.com/GAMETHEORY, and that's going to be $30 off of your order. Look, this isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. You got to go to that doctor. They only test that the current prescription still helps you see 20/20, and if you renew that prescription, it's going to be a lot easier for you. I just went through this process with Simple Contacts. It is great. It's fast. It's easy, and I can't recommend it enough. Go to simplecontacts.com/gametheory and get that $30 off now. Tony, as I mentioned at the top, you're one of the best guys at covering the NBA draft among the beat writers in the entire country. What are your strong draft takes this year? I need to know just some of them in general.
My strong draft takes. fire me off a couple of rapid questions, and I'll give you some strong takes.
Who is your favorite prospect in this class?
Luka Doncic.
Why?
I think he's the best basketball player in the class, and I think he's just terrific. I think he can play. I think if you're looking at the league that we're in right now, you need a Luka Doncic. You need a guy who can play 1 through 4, and he can play 1 through 4.
Who is your favorite big man in this class?
Jaren Jackson. Now, who's the best is probably still DeAndre Ayton. My favorite is Jaren Jackson because he reminds me of Kevin Garnett defensively.
I agree with that to an extent. I worry about the motor. Like, he doesn't have that, like, crazy-ass KG motor. But, he's a good motor, don't get me wrong. But, like, he's not out there trying to literally murder someone on the court every time like KG did. That stuff always scares me a little bit when you're trying to project guys as defensive stoppers.
The thing about Jaren, though, is that I think that he could be the prototypical defensive big man of this era. And the fact that he can guard on the perimeter and he can protect the rim.
Yeah.
And that way, I think he can play the 4, he can play the 5. Plus, he has every ability to develop into a plus 3-point shooter. And he's got good ball skills. He's a good passer. I think that I'm not so sure I wouldn't pick him second.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy to pick him second. I'm still not taking him over Marvin Bagley. I just can't do it. Like, Bagley is...
I have him on right now, though. That's the thing.
Say that again?
I do have him over Bagley. Like, you'll see, okay, so if you took Jaren Jackson and you picked him over Marvin Bagley, you'd be taking a risk because I think you know that you're going to get 20 and 10 from Marvin Bagley, right? Like, you know you're going to get that.
Yeah.
You know you're going to get that. You don't know how good he's going to be defensively because he might not be good defensively. He might block a shot or two. But
he's
you know you're
so
going to get
athletic, 20. Though. He's like, he's so athletic. He's one of the best athletes at that size I've ever seen.
He's Amari Stoudemire.
That's the name I've always been saying with him.
He's Amari Stoudemire with the ability to develop into a plus 3-point shooter.
Yeah. And
so you know you're going to get 20 and 10 from Marvin Bagley. No matter, he's probably going to get it in his sleep. But that's the risk with Jaren Jackson because if you draft Jaren Jackson, you might get a top 5 overall player, but you might get a guy that's playing out well. And that's the risk with Jaren as opposed to somebody like Marvin Bagley.
Where do you fall on the Michael Porter hype train?
So here's where I fall on that train. I wish he hadn't come back this season and given me that mental picture of the guy that was a shell of himself, that had no lift, couldn't move, couldn't get up off the ground. Like when it comes to Michael Porter, like I'm just so happy that I was able to see him in high school and like see him in real game action in high school when he was himself. Because I thought that his father and his coach and everybody around him, I thought they did him a gigantic disservice by letting him come back in March because it was just clear that he wasn't ready.
Yeah,
and he looked like 30% of Michael Porter. Now that being said, you know when he says, "Hey, I'm the best player in this draft," when I'm right, he's not far wrong. Like that guy is. If he's healthy, he's another guy that's just like he's going to drop numbers in his sleep. The question with him is how unselfish and how self-aware can he become because he hasn't been the most self-aware person in the past. How much defense is he going to play? And, where do you play him? Like, so, is he a 3-4? Is he a 4-3? I personally try to play him at the 3 because I'm not sure that he can guard at the 4. But he's just a really interesting prospect because I don't think you can pass on his talent and his upside.
My new weird take with Michael Porter is that at some point in his career, I think he's going to play some 5 because he's already 6'11" and has a 9-foot standing reach. And I think that you can get a lot out of him playing him at the 5 is a mismatch problem.
Problem with him is how's he going to mentally handle playing the 5?
Yeah.
Does he want to play the 5?
It's definitely matchup dependent.
we look at Paul George and we're like, God, he'd be a great four. and Paul just wants no part of the four.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of projecting these guys is where these guys fall mentally, because just like KG never wanted to play the five, just like LaMarcus doesn't want to play the five. I think there's a mental block there in a lot of cases, but it would be interesting, absolutely.
Best point guard in this draft out of Trae Young, Shea Alexander, and Colin Sexton.
Out of Trae Young, Gilgeous-Alexander, and Colin Sexton. Well, I'm not going Trae Young. Can we put a Kobo in this?
Yeah, you can put Elliot Kobo in here.
Because I really like him.
He's good.
I really like Kobo's athleticism. I love the fact that he's left-handed. He's a scorer. He doesn't see the floor as well as he needs to at this point. But I think that he's somebody that can safely be in this group. I'd probably go with Colin Sexton because he's just a dog and he's physically overwhelming at the point guard spot. And I think you have to develop some of the stuff that he needs to develop. He needs to develop a jumper, but he's a guy who's just going to come at you from minute 1 through minute 48 on both ends of the floor. So I'm going to go with Colin Sexton.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I mean, my thing with Colin is that he has the Happy Gilmore to him where he might, take his skate off and try and stab someone, in the middle of the game. And yeah. I like that, kind of, actually. I'm a big fan of just him being a crazy dude out there who is going to give you his all every single moment of the game. And he has that confidence, man. That, say he struggles. Every rookie faces some sort of adversity. Maybe Donovan Mitchell didn't this year, but every rookie faces some sort of adversity early on. I trust Colin Sexton more than I trust those other guys to fight through that immediately and get past it in a significant way. Yeah,
Colin's a dog, man. He's relentless. I think he has to learn how to play in some respects, and that's why I was kind of disappointed that he picked Alabama. I wish he had gone somewhere I wish he had gone somewhere with the coach who could develop him a lot more. And that one, he just basically took the year off and played on talent this year. And and I think that for these one and dones, I think it's important for those guys to go to somewhere where you're going to get better in that 1 year. And I'm not sure how much better of a player he is now than he was at this point last year.
It's also important to get that bag, though. I think that's also a pretty essential part of the college experience.
Stay away from that, Sam.
Allegedly. This has been a thing. It has been reported in Yahoo, allegedly, that Colin Sexton got a bag. Who's your favorite underrated guy in this class?
My favorite underrated guy in this class. I got a couple of them. Being at the Jazz, they're picking 21. There are a couple of favorite underrated guys. Elliot Kobo is one. That's why I try to put him in there. I really like him.
But let's talk about him real quick because I feel like a lot of people don't know him. He's a 6'3", 6'4", kind of combo-y guard. There's a lot of D'Angelo Russell there, I think. You watch him play, really, really good pick and roll scorer. He's just dropped 44 points on Aaron Kraft's dome last week, right after Aaron Kraft got awarded the French League Defensive Player of the Year award. It was amazing to watch. And he has very creative ball screen ability. He can split screens. He can knock down shots off the dribble in a significant way. He has those little pocket passes that I really like.
Love his athleticism. I love his athleticism.
Very fluid. He's just he's not hyper explosive, but he's very fluid. He knows how to get to his spots on the floor.
Yes. So, as I said, I think with Elliott is throwing the beauty of the eye of the beholder. I think that some teams will see him as a true guard, some teams will see him as a point, some teams will see him as a combo. But I think that he's a guy who's going to be able to come in and score right away at the NBA level. I'm in love. I got a man crush on the following. I have a man crush on Jerome Robinson, Kevin Huerter, Dante DiVincenzo. Kevin Huerter. He reminds me of Klay Thompson. 6'7", long, really, really shoot it, can come off a screen, can score off the bounce, can get into the mid-range and score, can get to the basket and score. Really young, very fearless. He's a guy that, if he goes back to school, he's a guy that I think is going to be a lottery pick next year. But if he comes out, I think that he's got a chance to be really good. Kyrie Thomas is another guy that I would really like. I'm intrigued with Troy Brown a little bit.
He'd be good for the Jazz, I think. They'd know how to get the most out of him. They've had really good luck getting guys to shoot.
They'd have to develop him for 2 years, but I think that they could. I think, with Troy Brown, he's somebody that's high risk, high reward, and I'd bet money on Utah's ability to develop this. One of the best I've ever seen. So there's a lot of guys. Jerome Robinson is just a guy that I really like. Chandler Hutchinson is a guy that I really like as well.
It'd be really funny if Utah stole Chandler Hutchison from Chicago and Portland right below and just made him just a stud. Because I'm a big Chandler Hutchison fan as well. I think he's very, very talented. Exactly really what the NBA is looking for. 6'7", 7-foot wingspan, can do a lot of different stuff on the floor. Yeah, I mean,
where are you on? Where are you on Kata?
He has a soft spot in my heart from going to Ohio State. I think he's a top 25 player in the class. I'm a little bit worried about foot speed. He's not super quick. He does have the super high release point on his shot. He has a super just methodical game where he finds his way to his spots on the floor, and I like that about him, but I'm a little bit worried about the foot speed on both ends of the floor, and I'm a little bit worried about him shooting directly off the catch because a lot of his stuff is one dribble pull up.
The thing about it is that makes him intriguing, though, is he measured at 6'8.5" at the combine.
I think he's a 4.5. I don't think he's a 3.4.
Right. So that changes things for me. Like he's a 4 now. Because I expected him to measure at 6'6.5" or 6'7". Then he basically measured at 6'8.5". So
and a 7'4" wingspan.
For the 7'4" wingspan, so that changes things. Now he's a switchable 4. You know what I mean? Now he's basically has a chance to be new school Trevor Ariza. So. That's kind of now where I'm a little nervous about him. He's already 22 years old.
Yeah.
So there's not as much room for development there. But it's just really interesting how many interesting to good prospects there are in this class. And if you look at people who how drafts usually go, somebody usually falls. I mean, there's just a lot of good players in this class beyond the superstar of the first 8, first 9, first 10 guys.
Yeah, this is a draft that I've been saying for a while. I'd feel really good to have a top 13 pick. I wouldn't feel great about having maybe a 16 or a 17 or an 18th pick, but I'd feel really good if I had the 24th pick, because there is a little gap there where I think everyone is just about the same after you get beyond 16, 17 or so, and it gets hard, I think, to order guys. But I think that additionally to that, you should feel great if you're a team like Phoenix that has multiple picks later on, or Atlanta has multiple picks late in this draft. I'd feel great if I was a team like that and could bring in multiple young pieces on rookie scale contracts.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think that's I think this is the draft class to do it. I think next year's draft is trash.
Oh yeah.
So, and so if you're the Jazz, right? If you're the Utah Jazz, knowing that next year you're probably going to get like the 25th pick. And knowing how weak next year's draft is, I mean, like, do you try to package something to move up, to get a Miles Bridges or something? If Miles Bridges is still around the 16, or if Alexander is still around the 16, or if Lonnie Walker is still around the 16. You know, and those are questions that you have to ask yourself. And I think that knowing what next year's draft class is, I think you might see some maneuvering in this draft in an attempt to try for teams to try to get what they want.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. I think that's absolutely possible. You just kind of look at the way the 2019 draft is. I mean, like, I think Chris Wilkes is someone I'm definitely going to have in my top 30. For 2019. Chris Wilkes just went to the combine and was like one of the worst players there, to be honest. Like, he just wasn't ready for it yet. And he's going to grow and he's going to get better. And he's going to become a very real wing prospect down the road at 6'7" with like a 6'11" wingspan, who's going to be able to knock down shots consistently as his body matures. He's also a guy that would not go before 45 in this class right now.
Right. Exactly, and you know, right now, I mean, what's the 2019 draft? Is R.J. Barrett, Daniel Gafford, and you know, there's everybody else. I mean, you know, a lot of people talk about Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish has zero motor right now.
I've never been more disappointed by a player's motor in my life.
He has no motor at all.
He should be the guy that goes number one in that class, like, very clearly. He is definitely the most talented player in that class.
If you put RJ's motor into Cam Reddish, you'd have an animal.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, you know, there's not a lot of depth there. I mean, it just makes it easy. I mean, and that, I mean, right now, if you're Kevin Huerter right now, I mean, if you go back to Maryland and you have an All-American type season, you know, where does that put you in the 2019 class? You have to weigh that with, okay, you know, do you stay in? I mean, so, you know, if you're Kevin Huerter, do you stay in this draft knowing that you're going to be a first-round pick, but knowing that you could be top 10 next year?
I leave because I think the extra year of earning potential and the ability to get to your free agency earlier is more valuable. But like, I understand why he would want to go back. Like, also, he's going back to Maryland, which isn't like a super great spot, you know? Like, Mark Turgeon is fighting for his job right now. They do have like some pretty solid recruits coming in. They have Aaron Wiggins. They have, I think Jalen Smith is coming in. Eric Ayala is like a little interesting point guard who could help Anthony Cowan a little bit. And then maybe like Bruno Fernando returns and takes his chances next year, and hoping that his guardian doesn't kind of lead him into a road where he's discussed within the FBI NCAA probe, because him and Silvio de Sousa are brothers and were brought to America by the same guardian. So like, he'd be kind of playing the lottery there a little bit, I think. But I think it's a tough call. I think it's a really, really difficult spot for everyone to be in. And I think it's a really difficult spot for Huerter. I would go, though. I would just leave.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Huerter. I mean, you know, like, it's not the difference between, okay, I might be a first-round pick this year, but I'm going to be a lottery pick next year. It's the difference between, yo, this dude is a lot for the first round. Like, you're not going to slide past the early 20s as opposed to being in a lottery. You know, I know there are a couple of teams in the early 20s that really love him, mm-hmm. that are afraid that he's not going to get to them.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's you know, if I had a big board, he'd be around 15 to 18 right now. But, you know, I was so impressed with what he was able to do this year. And, you know, shooters with size, man, the NBA needs that. Like, you know, the NBA needs shooter with size the way we need to breathe. So,
would you take him or Dante DiVincenzo?
So,
because what I'm a little bit worried about with Huerter, and why, like, I think it's like like an 80% chance he would go in the first round this year. But he's one of those guys where I can see him being second on everyone's board. Like, as the draft progresses, like, Los Angeles needs a big guy. We really like Herter, but, we're going to take Mitchell Robinson instead. And, Boston, we really like what Herter brings from the angle of his shooting ability, but we really like tough guys who defend, so we're going to take Josh Okogie. Like, I can see everyone liking him, but will everyone like him enough?
So you have to, if you pass Dante up for Kevin Herter, you probably have to reconcile with yourself that Dante's at or close to his ceiling, which I'm not sure I can do that because of how athletic he is, right? And the other thing about Dante is he is a dog. Like, he's one of those guys that just comes at you from minute one to the final buzzer. And he can shoot the ball, he can handle the ball, he can play the one, he can play the two. His athleticism won't let him get overwhelmed with mismatches in the post. He played for one of the best programs in the country, so he's got good habits. So I think it would be tough to pass up on Dante. But then again, it would be tough to pass up on Herter because he might turn into Klay Thompson. So it's a tough choice. So let me ask you, if you took those two and you put Jerome Robinson in that group, who would you take? Like,
I don't think any of them would be the highest on my board, I would say. Like, I like all of them, and I think they're good players. And of that group, I'd probably take Herter. But, like, I would also take probably Melvin Frazier over all of them. I'd very strongly consider taking Josh Okogie over all of them. I want athletic dudes who can defend.
So the thing with Melvin Frazier is he going to be able to shoot it enough?
Yeah, it's a big question.
And the thing with Melvin Frazier in relation to the Jazz is, the Jazz already have a Melvin Frazier because they have Royce O'Neal. Now, that being said, you can never have enough Royce O'Neal in this league.
Yeah.
Because you're watching Houston and Golden State, where both teams have all the wing play, and both of those guys are far ahead of the field of anybody. So right now, if you're a team in the draft, Mikal Bridges, Melvin Frazier, those type of guys got to be coveted. They got to be coveted because you need wings who can defend. And if you have a wing that's athletic and then can defend, and he can shoot the basketball, and he's got size and length, then guess what? He becomes Mikal Bridges, and he goes in the top 10.
Yep. No,
that's just how valuable those guys are right now.
That's the big thing I've been saying too with Frazier particularly is, like, I think that Bridges is a more sure prospect. I think he's a better prospect. Like, I would take Mikal Bridges over Melvin Frazier, but, like, there's, like, a pretty substantial chance, I think, that Melvin Frazier is better than Mikal Bridges at their peaks. Like, maybe it's like 30%, maybe it's like 35%, but, like, I don't think that they're so far off, and I think that Frazier's athleticism gives him a bit of a higher ceiling, too.
I'll tell you what, Frazier, man, he gets after you defensively. And
Monster.
I thought he was better. I thought he was better offensively at the combine than I think people gave him credit for. And when I mean better offensively, I'm talking about better off the dribble, making plays off the dribble. And, he really gets out and he makes a ton of plays in transition. That guy, he finishes in transition. And he finishes above the rim, and he'll finish on your head.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you look at that and you look at his switchability, I think he's going to be able to guard at the very least 1 through 3 in the NBA. Maybe at some point he can guard 1 through 4. I think that those are the type of guys that you have to that really have a lot of value, and I think that those are the type of guys that you have to you have to consider.
My last question for you: who is the most overrated player in this draft? Who's the guy that you look at and just don't really get it necessarily?
Trae Young.
Give me why.
Okay, there's a number of reasons, but the first reason is he's Isaiah Thomas defensively. He might be worse. So you're never going to be able to win on a high level with him because you're going to get at some point you in a playoff series you're going to get to a point
He's going to get headhunted.
He's just going to get murdered. Like, LeBron's going to murder him, or KD's going to murder him. So in order for you to win at a high level with Trae Young, he has got to be Stephen Curry. And he's not Stephen Curry. And
the odds are against him being Stephen Curry, I would say. Just because the odds are against everyone being Stephen Curry.
And that's the only way he's going to have value for you, right? First of all, he's not nearly as big as Stephen Curry. People forget Stephen Curry is every bit of 6'3". Trae Young is every bit of 5'11".
He's taller than that. He's like 6'2", but he's almost 6'2".
And I think that, I just think if you look at small, so I'm looking at Dante Exum, right? And I think Dante Exum made a lot of money by not even playing after the second round, because I think that you look at Terry Rozier, who is a really good defender, and you look at Stephen Curry, both of those guys have just gotten hunted on every single possession. And if you look at Dante Exum, you have a 6'6" point guard who can defend like he can, who can switch like he can. Teams need that. So when you look at Trae Young and you look at the amount of defense that he plays, which is 0, it's just going to be really hard for him to be a net positive. Now, a team can draft him, a team can make the playoffs with him. He might reach a great peak and be a 25-10 guy, but you're not going to be able to defend with him at the highest level in this NBA, and that automatically gives you a cap with him. So I would stay away from Trae Young.
Yeah. I just think he's really creative. I think he can get separation. I think he can be like a legit starting point guard in the NBA. I think he's going to be a very real starting point guard in the NBA. I'm a little bit worried. I've always been a little bit more skeptical on him than I think most people are. I tend to play devil's advocate with him, but I really like him. I really like the fact that he comes from a strong family. I really like the fact that, he seems to understand that he has to get bigger and stronger. So, maybe he figures that out and continues to put on strength and size. But there are a lot of holes to overcome with him, too. There's a lot for Trae Young to kind of figure out still, to where he can be a part of a winning basketball team, because he does need to, he needs to figure out a way to defend in some way, be it a super strong point of attack defender who just pests the shit out of people, or just getting stronger and being more physical. He needs to figure it out.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, I've talked to multiple executives who were really disappointed with him defensively. Not the fact that, I think they were disappointed with more that he didn't try defensively. Hung out on that end.
Lon Kruger not coaching defense all that much, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think that, if he had tried defensively and he had just, he just got cooked, okay, he just got cooked. That's something we need to work on. But the fact that you didn't try defensively, I think that's where some of the disappointment has come in with some of the executives that I've spoken with. But as I said, man, he's a guy who can really shoot the basketball. I think he's going to be a really good pick and roll player. He makes really good pick and roll decisions. I just think that, if I'm a GM, my goal is to win championships. And I just don't know, if I have Trae Young on my team, then, it's got to be exactly the way you built around Steph Curry. Everybody's got to be 6'6" through 6'8". Yep. Great defense. Everybody's switchable. And you got to have a rim protector on the back of the defense.
Yep. And
that's the only way you can sustain a starting lineup with Trae Young in it right now.
Yeah.
Defensively.
Yeah, I think I agree. Tony, tell the people how to find you online. Tell the people where they can find your work. Just everything that's going on in your life.
I am in the Salt Lake Tribune. You can check me out at www.sltrib.com, or you can check me out on Twitter at TribJazz, TRIBJAZZ. Or, you could just keep checking back in periodically, and, Sam can keep having me on his podcast.
We'll do this again before the draft, maybe, because I enjoy having you on. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe over on iTunes. We're also on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, Android, every other app, Pocket Casts, whatever you got, we're up there now. Go subscribe to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. Until next time, though, we'll talk soon. Bye.